everybody, welcome back to another episode of Life, the Complete Story. As always, I am your host, Tyler, joined with my lovely co-host, Alex.
Hello, everybody.
Alright, welcome back. This week we're going to be covering the phylum Nematoda, also known as the roundworms. But before we do that, we're going to get back into what we normally do, which is nature in the news. But, unfortunately, we are kind of doing a double feature. We recorded the episode 6, Rotifer and Tardigrade episode, right before this. And we kind of want to give it some time before a new news article comes up. So instead, we're going to be playing a game.
For all those listening, I don't know what's happening.
Alex has no idea.
This would be an adventure for all of us.
We're going to be having a draft.
Oh, okay.
You're going to get 4 animals. Each of us get 4 animals, and your draft is to create the best squad to take down the other team.
Oh.
And since I kept you in the dark, I will let you go first. You have the first round pick overall.
I want hippos.
You want hippos?
Yeah.
All right. Alex takes the hippo.
Yes.
That's quite the tank you have there.
That is a A-plus starter. So for those who don't know, the hippopotamus, while vegetarian, is the most dangerous animal on the planet.
It is indeed. I think with my first round pick, I will take the saltwater crocodile.
Oh.
They might be a bit slow.
It's a solid second choice.
But they have that. They're an aquatic threat as well. Hippos are an aquatic threat. Saltwater crocs are an aquatic threat. They also have a massive bite force.
That is true.
And once they lock onto you, you're not getting out without losing whatever he's holding. What he's holding on
without
to.
losing limbs.
So
it's a bad time.
That's my first round pick. Alex, we move back to you.
All right. I'm trying to keep the second because I went for like a semi-aquatic first round. I'm trying to keep the second one purely terrestrial. I'm going to go with the moose.
The moose? I like that pick too.
So, and for those who don't know how big a moose is, think like how big your typical like 4-door sedan is. Like 2 of those is a moose. They're enormous. Not quite as heavy, but you got to think they're fast. They can also swim very well. Actually, one of the moose's biggest predators is the orca. So because they're able to dive down to 30 feet to eat aquatic seagrasses and plants. So I guess they're a bit more terrestrial though than the hippopotamus.
True.
The hippo spends most of its time in the water.
I think with my second pick, I'm also going to take one of those cold weather threats. I'm going to go with the polar bear.
Oh, I was thinking about the polar bear. Oh,
just massive.
Yes,
largest terrestrial predator in the world.
They're gigantic.
Not to mention, they also have quite the flippers as well.
Yes, they can do some schwamming. All right, number 3. I'm going to take my my third one. Okay, I'm going to go for a bird on this one. Well, I'm going to try to get one kind of from a bunch of different places.
I like that too.
What's the giant? It's an eagle, but it's gray. It's kind of got that, like, almost got the devil.
The harpy eagle.
Yes, I knew it started with an H. Yes, the harpy eagle. That's massive bird of prey.
Massive. They snatch monkeys out of trees in South America.
They're enormous. Not
right.
quite condor size, but they're huge, and they're birds of prey.
Right. I think I'm going to take a bird too. I have it narrowed down to 2, but I think I'm going to take the ostrich.
Oh, solid choice.
They're fast.
They're fast. They got some stompers on them too.
They got some legs, and those legs kick hard.
Yes, sir.
You will break ribs.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I'll go. Since you have a reptile, I'll make my last one a reptile also. And I'm not going to go with a crocodilian because that'd be too easy. We're going to go with the green anaconda. one
I
of
like that.
the largest snakes, as well. It is the heaviest snake, and they're also somewhat aquatic. They do swim very well. They're massive part of the python group of reptilia.
Yeah,
The class.
constrictors.
Yeah, they're constrictors, but they're massive. They will actually fight and eat crocodilians.
Right. Actually,
It's
within
one
the
of those it goes both ways kind of things.
within the past month or two, I'd say, they discovered a new individual anaconda. Not discovered. They found a new individual that took the mass record.
Oh,
It was it has since died.
ah,
Um, I think that was just someone identified as a threat and said, no, we can't have it. Even though it was doing
probably.
nothing wrong. They just see the big scary snake and go for the kill. Um, I have my last pick. I took my reptile already. I took my bird, mammal. I think I'm gonna go fish.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go with a bull shark.
Ooh, there you go.
And I honestly think we're kind of split down the middle.
Yeah, this would be quite a an interesting.
Quite a fight.
Yeah, this may be one to let the
viewers
let the
decide
viewers
who won.
decide.
Who won this draft?
Yeah, see what
Alex
they think.
had a moose, an anaconda,
The hippopotamus and the harpy eagle.
right, and I took the saltwater crocodile, the ostrich, the polar bear, and the bull shark. So leave it in. I'll put a poll on this one. I'll put a poll. Ask the question on the Spotify. Leave it down below in the YouTube comments if that's how you view these episodes.
Yeah.
But without further ado, let's get into our meat and potatoes of the week. Alex, what are we talking about this week?
This week we're talking about the phylum Nematoda, which are the roundworms. So, like last week, we're now getting a little bit more advanced as we're going through our phylogenetic tree. So the roundworms, or Nematoda, there's thousands of them. There's over 15,000 known species. You can find thousands of them, thousands of individuals. Just you take a big handful of dirt, and you'll find them. Like there's just tons of them. They're very incredibly widespread organisms. Um, they can lay millions of eggs at a time to some species, hundreds of thousands in a single day. It's said that there could be potentially even up to 500,000 unknown species of roundworm that we just haven't discovered yet because they're just so diverse and widespread, or because they're classified as another species now and haven't done enough of the research to differentiate them. But they are, of course, roundworms. They are worm-like, long, tube-like or cylindrical body, but different than you think of your typical worms. Most people think of earthworms. They're not segmented, so that's actually a different grouping of worms. Those are in the phylum Annelidae, the annelids, segmented worms. We'll talk about those at a later date. So the nematoda is just a smooth, cylindrical body that they use to move through water, soil, kind of swimming in that back and forth serpentine motion. But they are, we talked a little bit last week about your coelomates, your pseudocoelomates. They are pseudocoelomates. So they actually do have a proper gut, like an actual gut, separate from the rest of the body cavity, or like the body, like tissues. It is like within its own little cavity space, in the middle, in the body. They actually have that separate digestive tract. Like it's an actual kind of organ now.
The tube within the tube.
Correct. The tube within the tube.
The gut is its own little straw within the overall bigger straw of the epidermis.
Yeah. And so that epidermis, like to talk to, we're getting into organisms that create a cuticle. So the cuticle, it's not just, we talked a little bit about it last week because the rotifers and the tardigrades are able to make a cuticle as well. It's not so much like a bunch of cells that just create an extra layer. It's more of like a bunch of cellular matter that's excreted with a whole lot of different nuclei, a whole lot of those organelles. It
Right.
creates a kind of a harder protective, or not so much harder, but it's a extra kind of
It's a film.
protective, yeah, like a waxy, filmy layer around the that epidermis of that epidermals, those cells that actually make up the body. It's outside of the body,
Right. And it's
an
kind
extra
of
layer.
it's kind of like a precursor to modern day arthropods and their like chitinous exoskeletons.
Yes.
So it's not quite that chitin material, that high proteinous shell. It's more of a waxy film that still protects it from desiccation and things like that, but not quite fully functional as an exoskeleton.
Yeah, but it is a little bit more firm than the actual cellular material. Because reading through our notes here, they actually use that sort of as a point for it as they move through. Uh, it's similar to like that skeleton uh, that you would think of for the arthropods, that exoskeleton. Kind of use it like that. It's when they move their muscles, they have kind of long muscles that run the length of the body of the roundworm that helps them move as those contract. It gives it that serpentine motion as it can swim through, similar to the way a snake slithers. Most people are familiar with snakes.
Yeah. Here, I'll go into a breakdown real quick of how. So there's three different phylum of worms. There's the nematodes, which we're talking about today. There's the annelids Alex alluded to earlier, which are the segmented worms, and there's the platyhelminths, which are the flat worms. They're the most primitive out of all of these, I'd say.
Yeah. Then the roundworms are in the middle, and then the segmented worms are the most
right.
most advanced.
So the
flatworms
worms move kind of just by undulation. They like undulate the edges and like it waves along.
Mm-hmm.
The nematodes, they do this back and forth wiggle motion.
Yeah.
Because they only have two muscles that run around the length, so it's kind of like a contract, shimmy, along.
Are you thinking of the two muscles? I think it's the two nerves.
Yeah.
They have kind of, I think they usually have muscles the whole way around, but they really only have, so we'll move into that with those muscles. They have two nerves on the top and on the bottom. So dorsal, think like on
like a dorsal fin from a fish.
Yeah, like
a
fish, dorsal fin, and then the ventral, which is that bottom side, the belly side. So they do actually have a top and a bottom as well,
right.
Which is something we talked a little bit more about as we've gotten like sponges. They just have, it's just a sponge.
Yeah.
You have like the inlets, outlets, but then as you get more developed, you'll start getting. We talked about that symmetry.
Yeah.
They actually
bilateral.
So we're getting into that bilateral symmetry. So it's either like up and like left and right is usually, so like there's a top and a bottom, and you split it down the middle from like along that top bottom line, and then that's the symmetry. But if you change it, you should cut middle horizontally, so you separate top and bottom. It is different. This is something as these more developed organisms are. This is something you see in them, as the more primitive organisms do not show that.
Right. So nematodes have, they also exhibit cryptobiosis. That's why we're talking about these right after we're talking about the rotifers and the tardigrades. As we talked about last week, cryptobiosis is being able to halt your body's functions to maintain survival. Along with this, there is, as much as there's 15,000 known species of nematode and maybe 500,000 yet to discover, a lot of them look exactly the same or very minuscule details.
Yeah.
So identification is hard.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the differences are genetic differences
Right.
when they're differentiating your species.
Right. And many nematodes are microscopic, similar in size to the rotifers and the tardigrades. If you're testing a freshwater, say you're testing a lake sample, you're going to find a load of rotifers, hopefully some tardigrades, loads of nematodes, along with some diatoms and some algae and other
Like those very small,
protozoans,
microscopic
amoebozoids,
organisms.
type like that. Um, but nematodes can also go larger. There's a host of parasitic. Basically, if there's an organism that exists, there's probably a nematode that parasites off of it. And the
Yeah.
largest known nematode is a parasite of the sperm whale, one of the largest individuals or individual species in the world. It's one of those whales, of course it's large.
Yeah.
But they have found nematode parasites in sperm whales that measure up to 13 meters long. So that's roughly, like 39 feet, almost 40 feet, Alex?
Yeah, but that's what I was looking. 42 and a half feet, roughly.
That's,
So that's like the length of a school bus.
yeah.
Massive.
Once again, we're kind of in that weird period, weird grouping of organisms where it's like, yes, they're super durable and they're super hardy and they do this cryptobiosis. And they can do cryptobiosis because they're so soft. Nematodes fall in that same group of they're soft, which means that we don't get very many fossils in the fossil record. It's believed the earliest fossils have been found from the Carboniferous period, so that's pre-dinosaurs,
Yes.
post-Ordovician, I believe.
Yes. So you said the Carboniferous period.
Yeah, that's when all the big trees
So
were alive.
yeah, so that is
all the big bugs.
pre-dinosaurs. That is between the Devonian and the Permian. So that is later Paleozoic era. So like we said before dinosaurs, but it's about 200 million years after what you've heard us talk about that Cambrian explosion, which is really what is kind of delineated as when life really exploded on the Earth.
Right. The Cambrian explosion is when we kind of started to get that multicellular life, as we discussed earlier.
Correct.
So, although the oldest fossils we have were from the Carboniferous period, a lot of people believe that these existed back in the Cambrian period based off of similar life forms that we know existed.
As well as the simplicity of the life forms. Typically, it only gets more complex.
Looks like we're narrowing down on our notes here, but we can always share our presentation of our
There we go.
paperwork
Yeah.
that we
So
have.
the picture there would be good, like our roundworms. That is what the vast majority of them look like.
A thread.
It's just a long thread-looking shape.
That's actually what nematode means.
Yeah.
Nematode comes from the Greek word for thread.
So we talked about a little of that biology, that tube within the tube. So it has a mouth, a stomach, or like a gut. It's not quite a true stomach the way we think of it, the way your more developed organisms have. But it's that gut cavity where it digests food.
Right. And you can see that in the center
Correct.
of this.
Yeah. And then
cut section.
it excretes it through the body, through the anus. So they do have a true gut. It's not just one orifice. And then I believe, if I remember correctly, they can reproduce both sexually and asexually. I believe similar. I know if you like cut a roundworm, it can actually grow back on both sides. If I remember correctly. Not 100%. I know they can
I'm also not
reproduce
100%
sexually.
Sure. Because I know of platyhelminths being able to regenerate from.
Correct. That may be what I'm thinking of, but the roundworms could do it as well. I'm not sure.
Right. It's interesting. I'll look into that. Would you care to explain this diagram while I do that, Alex?
Yes. So this kind of shows our It's a cross section of a nematode. So as you can see, that dorsal and ventral nerve we talked about, and then those coming off either side of it, they're like little tiny nerves that go and feed the muscle fibers, the muscle cells within the worm, and that's how they move. So they have that top and bottom nerve that control the top and bottom side of the body, the muscles on those sides. So it's a rudimentary sort of nervous system, but it is a nervous system. So it's more than before. And of course, your epidermis and that cuticle kind of right along the epidermis, almost like another protective layer. And then that body cavity, we're talking about, these are pseudocoelomates. So that body cavity, you can see the cavity spaces are separate from the actual gut cavity. So it is not part of the regular just body tissue. There is a separation. And that's where they digest their food. And then it is, as the rest of the cells in the body use it and excrete it, they actually have a separate excretory canal.
Seen on the sides here.
Yeah, seen on the sides that they use to excrete the waste products used in their biological processes.
Okay, I have found our reproduction of roundworms.
Okay.
Many nematode species are dioecious, which means there's a separate male and female individual, which typically leads to sexual reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are some species that are androdioecious, which means that they have hermaphroditic individuals as well as males. So that kind of, in my mind, is the hermaphrodites are able to reproduce by themselves if they can't find a mate, but will pursue a mate first.
That makes sense.
That's how I read into this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The hermaphrodites are also capable of self-fertilization, as most are. There are also other forms of reproduction. Some do endotokia matricida, which is worm bagging. Whenever you fertilize and she self-incubates the eggs inside of herself, but in order for the eggs to hatch, they eat the mother.
Okay, interesting. So it's like a sacrificial.
Yeah.
The mother actually, like sort of like a pregnancy. They actually hold the embryos within the body until the point when they're ready to be born or hatch. At which point they eat the mother to feed them as they begin their life as adult organisms.
Right. And then the hermaphroditic organisms are able to keep their eggs inside themselves, self-fertilize, and then release them when they're ready to hatch.
Okay.
And then the last one I see is facultative sexuality, where it is most of the time it's reproduced asexually, but if the chance arises, they will do that sexual reproduction. And I lied. The last one, this one is actually pretty interesting to me. Parthenogenesis, we talked about last week, which is the female being able to reproduce via unfertilized eggs. So you still need the sperm of the male, but they don't fuse with the ovum. It's just the contact of the sperm to the egg is able to trigger something within the process that then triggers the ovum to divide, but does not cause the sperm to fuse to the egg.
So the sperm is still able to fertilize another egg, is what you're saying.
The sperm is not used to fertilize the eggs. There is no fertilization occurring. Okay. It is all parthenogenesis.
Okay, so they wouldn't just be able to just produce developing embryos. They actually need some sort of
yeah, they need a trigger because without the trigger of the sperm touching the egg, there is no dividing.
Okay, so but still one sperm could maybe cause multiple eggs to begin parthenogenesis. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, so cool. So they reproduce in a lot of different ways, which is probably leads to why there's so many of them all over the world. They have a lot of different ways that they're able to make more of them. And then, so yeah, especially extremely abundant in soils and sediments, at least the free living species, and they can be found even in many extremes such as ice and hot springs, salt water, fresh water, super durable organisms. So
Right. And as I said, there's free living species as well as parasitic species. Some human nematode parasites include ascaris, hookworms, pinworms, webworms, trichinella, trichinosis.
okay,
That worm is a nematode.
okay, guinea worm.
Guinea
That's it.
worm,
Yeah,
correct.
which if I remember, those
But
are
they're not.
incredibly
They don't just
painful.
use animals as hosts. There's some that are found in plants as well. There's a
Yes,
soybean cyst nematode. A lot of
actually,
times cause some type of
yeah, one
blight.
of our invasive species today, I for the reason our invasive species today is a nematode. So
Oh,
I will get
that's
a little,
interesting.
yeah. So that kind of spoiling the surprise a little bit.
That's okay. I'll ruin the immersion even.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just a hint at how we manage this invasive species.
Okay, we'll
Uh,
talk about that more here in a little bit.
yeah, actually, we'll just roll into it now because
Yeah,
the only
actually,
other bit that I have for nematodes is the amount of general studies we do on reproduction and how not
yes,
reproduction, aging.
yes,
Yes,
because they can live like incredibly long times for such a simple organism. Can live a
right.
really long time.
They have some genes that are able to repair their DNA, so they kind of there's like a gene that hinders it and a gene that uh helps it.
Okay,
So it's all dependent on what gene is suppressed and what
expresses.
gene is expressed. But
Interesting.
yes, we will flow right into your most wanted of the week.
Yes. So, as I said, my most wanted of this week for a reason is a nematode, and it is the golden nematode, also known as the yellow potato cyst nematode. So, as Tyler was saying, they can be crop parasites. This is one of those. Scientific name Globodera rostochiensis, named by Wollenweber in 1923, formerly known as Heterodera rostochiensis. So the genus name has changed. Uh, they are initially native to South America, but it appears that they were introduced to Europe, most likely during the period of exploration. I think Christopher Columbus and those explorers that traveled to South America and then went back to Europe. Uh, because it said it was introduced to the United States, first seen in Long Island, New York, in the early 1940s. 1941 is what is said here. It probably was there before that in the late 30s. Most likely from military equipment uh, after World War One. After that return, so it was probably something that was not seen, or they didn't understand what it was until that later date in the 1940s. But a very good chance it was there before that. Something it causes brown cysts to grow um, on potatoes. You can see there's the picture on the side there is kind of an idea of what those cysts look like. It looks like it's on the actual root part of the roots of the potatoes.
So
Um,
this is a comparison picture of the Rostoschiensis, the
uh,
Globodera rostoschiensis, and the Globodera pallida.
yeah. So two different
Right.
potato cyst nematodes.
So neither one of them is good.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, looking at it, they both look like they're both potato cyst nematodes. They cause these cysts to form as they grow and feed on the roots of the potatoes. But I'm guessing that the differentiation, why it's called the golden nematode, is that one on the top. It says there they turn that kind of golden color before they turn brown. I think as they age um, and probably reproduce. So something that it's a pretty significant problem because it could, in some areas where it's a pretty bad infestation, can cause up to 100% loss in potato years. So farmers could plant whole acres of potatoes and lose every single potato in that field due to this invasive species. So something that was transported multiple times, actually, over a couple of different centuries and different continents, native to South America, but introduced to North America from Europe. So this is invasive species is not a new topic. Pretty much as long as we've been able to do extended travel to many different areas in shorter amount of times, where those invasive species are able to survive that long. In a case, especially where things were brought back purposefully, like the age of exploration on ships, that increased the likelihood of those things being transported. And it looks like here those cysts are the result of egg masses from the nematode. It kind of those cysts develop as it's laying its eggs or as they grow.
Okay.
They feed on the root surface, or and then they kind
So
of
they live on the outside of the roots,
I believe so, or if like
or in the
just
soil
subsurface,
surrounding.
yeah. And then they kind of burrow into the roots a little bit to lay the eggs, and as the eggs grow and develop, the cyst forms around them, and then over time it causes that kind of color change, especially as they get towards the time they hatch. They turn from that gold to brown at the time that the cyst breaks, releasing the larvae into more of this invasive species.
Right. Okay. I get it now. Because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you was, did these live on the outside of the root, or in the soil surrounding the root, or is it in those xylem and phloem, those material moving, the nutrient moving tissues in the plants?
Yeah.
Because that could wreak havoc on any type of parasite that does that. Could wreak havoc, as we've talked before with some of our other invasive species.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, very, very good. So now,
One of the things I did read, though, is it seems like a lot of the regulated areas they're having for these golden nematodes. A, it's only in New York right now, in terms of regulated areas, to my knowledge.
Okay.
B, it seems like they're reducing a lot of the area because they're not seeing the nematodes in those soil samples anymore.
So that's probably something either other native nematodes are feeding on them as well, or like a lot of these kind of things, especially when it comes to crops, chemical control is a very big method of dealing with these sort of organisms.
Okay. Is that all you have for...
That is all I have for the golden nematodes. So now into our final section, our segment, which is our amazing species. So Tyler, you can take us through our amazing species for this week as we wrap up.
This week's amazing species is going to be the splendid poison frog. Scientific name, Ufaga speciosa. Sad stories today. Last week I had happy stories about the deer that we brought back from basically an island rule level population.
At the brink of extinction.
And this one, not so lucky. The IUCN has the splendid poison frog listed as extinct. Period. Dot. No EW, just EX, extinct in everything.
Unfortunate.
Granted, that can change. Last assessment was in June 2018. However, let's zoom out on this map a little bit so I can show you just how small the range was. So we're in Panama, in Central America, on about 1 to 2 nature reserves, it looks like. I don't have a scale, I'm realizing now, to really tell you how big of an area it is.
But not, relatively speaking, not a big area.
Correct. This was published in 2020. So just to give you a scope of how quickly of an impact we could have on these organisms and these species, this was assessed in 2010 and 2004. And both times they were labeled as endangered, which, if we look up at this list here, endangered is like 4 rungs down the ladder. So in less than 10 years from its previous publishing, it went from 4 rungs down to extinct. We have a lack of records from its restricted range. So, I mean, Panama is a jungle through and through. So there could be them still alive. I'm hopeful. I'm a very
It's
optimistic person when
possible
it
that
comes
there
to
could be a couple individuals that are still surviving and
right.
deep
And
in hard to reach places.
there's been other species who we thought have gone extinct, other amphibian species for that matter, where it's like, oh, they're extinct. You know, we did everything we can to try and save them, which just didn't work out. And then a couple come back a dozen years later to do a different survey. You're like, oh, remember that golden toad? Yeah, we found it again.
The
But
golden
they were
toad.
found at about 1,370 meters tall. So kind of
Pretty
that,
high up there.
yeah, mountainous rainforest type areas.
Yeah, that is 4,500 feet above sea level, I think.
Right.
So almost not quite a mile, but pretty darn close, over 3/4 of a mile of elevation. So that's from sea level goes up 3/4 of a mile. So pretty high mountain.
Yeah. So moving into its threats and how it kind of went extinct, one of the worst threats to the amphibian population is this chytrid fungus. I don't know if you've heard about it, Alex.
Yes, I think that's the one that is affecting a lot of the amphibians. It's the one we talked about, the golden toad, because many people who take like different biology classes or environmental science classes, the golden toad usually comes up at some point. So
It's
it's a
kind of
very
the poster
popular.
child for
Yes.
we screwed up.
Yes. Yes. It is. So it said here that chytrid fungus BD is a specific one. 1996 is when it kind of was introduced to the region and moved through at a pretty high rate of speed and pretty much wiped out the species. And it said it hasn't been recorded since. So even though those last two listings said endangered, there's a very good chance that it could have possibly been to a level of extinction, unless they may have found like a couple individuals.
Yeah,
But
their scope was
yeah,
greater than 90% of the species was experienced mortality due to this.
okay. Yeah, and it says it is an invasive species, this chytrid fungus.
Right.
So
before its extinction, it was a prized species to have in your pet collection. Obviously, for its splendid red color.
yeah, very
Let
very
you guys
bright
take a
colors.
gander. But it's kind of unknown right now if anybody still has like a private collection. No zoos in the world own one any in their collections. Prior to its extinction, it was in a protected area, but protected areas are really only good for stopping us from threatening them. They don't do much against natural predators and invasive species. They do the best by preventing the introduction of endangered species, but for a fungus such as chytrid, it's difficult to keep out.
Yeah, it's too widespread, spread too quickly. Also,
Right.
really, nothing that could have been done to stop this species from going extinct, unfortunately.
Right. So, once again, sad story for the world of conservation. Granted, this isn't new by any means. This is almost a decade old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it stings. And we as conservationists, naturalists, and biologists will continue to do our best to keep as much of what we can intact and
Correct.
preserve it for the next generation.
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately this is happening to a lot of different species all over the world all the time. And even like this is a jungle, those tropical environments where there's so many, they're so diverse. It could be the point where there are species that are unknown to science that are going to extinct, moving to extinction, because there's such diversity. It's hard to tell the difference if they've even been researched at all.
Right, and as we talked about nematodes, we've identified 15,000 species, and part of the reason we haven't identified more is because the differences between species might be something as simple as just a couple genes in the code differ enough for it to be its own species.
Yeah.
But we'll try to wrap up on a happy note here. Let's go over our housekeeping as we always do. Make sure to follow us on Spotify. Give us a like and a subscription on YouTube if you haven't already. Follow us on our socials. On Instagram, it is at Life Complete Story. And on Facebook, we are Life the Complete Story, as the title says.
Yeah. And then as well, you can email us at lifecompletestory@gmail.com. It's all one word, all lowercase, and there's no "the" in the title. It's just Life Complete Story. So
And what can they email us at Life Complete Story? What do we want to hear?
we want to hear you guys' suggestions, questions, curiosities, cool stuff that you guys find, cool biology stuff that you find that you'd like us to talk about on the podcast. We'd love to be able to start doing kind of a comment section portion of the podcast where we go through you guys' comments and talk about some of the things you've submitted to us, especially if you send us something really cool. We'll absolutely feature it. Something that's worth talking about. If you have more questions about the topics that we've covered in previous weeks, we would love to dive deeper in and learn more along with you. It's something we don't already know about. So it absolutely, like we always say, we would keep learning, learn something new every day, and we would love to learn from you guys just as much as we like to teach you as well.
Right. And as I said earlier, make sure you follow us on socials so you can stay up to date on any cool articles that we find and want to share with you. Think of it like a give and take. You send us things in our email box, we send you things on our social media pages. Whether it be a news article that didn't quite make the cut for the week as our nature in the news, or whether it be a little highlight for another amazing species that fits similar to something we just talked about, but wasn't quite featured on the episode. Or even it's something we see in our daily doom scrolling. Alex and I send videos like this all the time to each other. So sometimes it's, a little bit on the more wild side. Maybe a bison getting mad at some pedestrians in the middle of Yellowstone. Other times it's something really cool, like we highlighted something last week, and I'm trying to think of something else we can highlight.
Just some cool species, some crazy
looking
individual organism that something you don't see a lot, like a lot of these tropical frogs. There's a lot of different varieties, and they're really cool looking. They got a lot of crazy colors. Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start kind of photo arc, if you will, as we cover these amazing species, where it's a picture documentary type thing that we cover on our Instagram page, where we highlight these amazing species, and you as a viewer and as a follower can look at and listen and see, oh, this is cool. This is similar to this though. Like how are these two related? And fuel your imagination to kind of get those juices flowing, so you can send us questions and then we can talk about it on the show.
Absolutely.
And hopefully over the summer we can get on our YouTube some bonus content, whether it's me and Alex out on the lake doing some fishing for a little bit, maybe a tour of our local flora and fauna and the zoos and wildlife parks that we have, things like that. It's always looking for new opportunities to kind of get our side of nature out to you guys. That's gonna wrap it up for me. I'm your host Tyler, always joined by host Alex, and always, as Alex said, keep learning.
Learn something
Learn
new
something
every
new
day.
every day.